Hello everybody, Ray Garner with Garner's Games, here to do my weekly comic review, and this week, going to Apocalypse. This is the start of well, it's not really the start, it's basically the first real installment of the new Age of Apocalypse storyline. This one is X-Men Alpha of Apocalypse. Now, this is brought to us by Jeph Loeb and Simone, I believe how it's pronounced. It's D-I, then M-E-O. And our story pretty much starts with Blink teleporting around and getting a package. And she's hollering for Mr. Creed. We got Creed and Wild Child on our big splash page. Pretty cool. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, my memory's a little foggy on Age of Apocalypse, that this is the basic design of that original run. And as he's basically covering for Blink to escape, Havoc arrives. Now, I do think it's interesting that Havoc's Age of Apocalypse outfit is basically just the 90s. We wear like a sort of bandana thing around our head and have our hair hanging out everywhere. Because, everybody has big hair in the 90s, even though the big hair was mainly 80s. But other than that, his costume is pretty much the same as it always is. And then, as he's starting to get the overhand, talking about killing Creed, Rogue shows up and touches him and removes his power. Or at least, that's what it looks like. And maybe Age of Apocalypse Rogue works differently than regular Rogue, but she touched him through his costume with a gloved hand. So, unless her power set works slightly different than regular universe Rogue, I do have an issue with that. As we're going along here, he's kind of threatening her and her boyfriend because his wife has been killed. But Remy shows up and takes him down. And actually, according to the dialogue, kills him. And the cat's hopping around all of a sudden. Lay down. There you go. Good kitty. By the way, this is really nice artwork on Gambit there. I'm going to show that one off there. I think the artist did a really good job there on Remy. Anyway, slight argument ensues. Blink gets everybody teleported back. And I'm going to stop and right here real quick on this very nice tribute page to Jim Shooter. Well done. And then we find out the person in the case is Morph, who for some reason, maybe Morph's changed a little more than I know, but he's turned into Pseudo-Plastic Man, which is a little weird. Anyway, they've gone to talk to Magneto. And they got various plans going around. I do have to admit, I don't understand the Iceman Aurora appearance here. Other than them just showing up, they really didn't seem to add anything to the story right there. But it's also that they can get Forge away from Mr. Sinister. And Forge has basically lobotomized Forge. And taken him completely apart. Removed almost all of his human parts. Anyway. Eric and him decide they're taking Forge, and he seems to be somewhat kind of brainwashed by Sinister. It's kind of hard to tell. But they all leave. Ford starts talking about building a device, a chronometer of sorts, so that they could time skip to various possible points that could actually avoid the creation of this timeline. And Eric wants to go back and now we have a chance to begin the age of the X-Men, our X-Men. Then we have a nice little chat between Blink and Krieg as they are talking about how they're going to basically vote about changing the entire timeline. And it was kind of a little bit of a drawn out deal of basically debating on, changing everything. But in the end, of course, we're going to do it because otherwise we don't have a story. And then we cut back to Sinister, and he's talking to Holocaust. And the base concept is they seem to be making sure that Apocalypse returns. Well, we get to the teleporting, and everybody's here. The Xavier School. We don't exactly say when, but Nate Gray, the X-Man, has arrived and tells them you shouldn't be here. And that's where the first issue of this ends, and it's going to be continued in X-Men #1, or X-Men of Apocalypse #1. Let me correct that. All, an interesting book. It gets bonus points for actually making me interested in it when it is an Age of Apocalypse story, which is one of my least favorite overall story arcs in X-Men history. Well, I should say major popular ones. There are some really bad ones that nobody considers good, so we're not going to count those. So this is well done. The intro to this is better than any of the previous Ages of Apocalypse that we've dealt with. So I like that. So kudos to them. I'm still a little confused about what we're doing with the timeline. And if the end of this book with a Holocaust and that is an indication of the main point of this story, I will be aggravated with this story, but we'll see, because I don't know anything about it. I haven't read any spoilers beyond I read issue 0, and I read this book, and that's all I currently know about what we're leaning towards. But if the whole point of this is to bring back Apocalypse because we killed Apocalypse off, was it right before or right after the Krakoa era ended? I think it was right after the Krakoa era ended. Then this is a whole lot of books to accomplish a feat that doesn't actually need to be accomplished, because it shouldn't need to be accomplished, because if we didn't want Apocalypse dead, then we probably shouldn't have killed him. So we'll see how this goes. But as far as a launching vehicle, very good launching vehicle. So hopefully we can pull this out and we'll make an actual interesting Age of Apocalypse storyline that I will enjoy. For the people who have enjoyed the previous Age of Apocalypse, I think you're going to love this, because I think this is the best done single issue of the Age of Apocalypse that's happened. So, good start. See where it goes. We got, I think it's 12 or 16 issues of this overall story arc before we get to the conclusion. A lot of crossovers, a lot of one-shots, a lot of stories bouncing back and forth through everything. This is a big event for the X universe. Be interested to see what all happens, and I hope it's really good. Till next week, to me, my X-Men.